very brief introduction to my piece exhibited in the Museum of Futures this year. It's the green box on the table, if you're wondering. I'm asking for your help with an unfinished project. A project that I find myself unable to finish because it is so closely tied to my grief. It raises the question, is grieving ever finished? That which is lost remains lost. If anything, more is lost to time and memory. Part of my piece is asking you all to bear witness to the loss, to help me select which images of my grief to keep and which to discard. Because I cannot do it. I tried. I tried really hard. It's been months of trying. And honestly, it was just a relief to get them out of the flat. Even if I did have to carry it in, a duffel bag on the train. Each image originated as a photograph I took on the train ride home from the funeral. My grief was fresh and unchecked. I cried obscenely through the funeral mass itself. It's my first mass. I became nauseous and almost passed out at the viewing. I dropped everything and traveled thousands of miles to attend the funeral. Her death took me by surprise. She was my guardian angel, a gift from the science gods, the woman that made the impossible possible. She was my employer once upon a time, a teacher, my friend, my mother's friend, unusual. My mother didn't have many friends, and certainly none that overlapped with mine. She's the subject of a book I'm writing, a fan of the nightmare, a really hardcore fan of the nightmare. And the reason I passed multivariable calculus at university. My multivariable calculus professor's wife sang in church choir with her and was properly intimidated, which she passed on to him, which led him to feel so sorry for me for being her employee that he passed me. Seriously. This was at a fairly elite university too, which should give you some idea of how fucking terrifying she was. I mean, she thought the nightmare was fun. The White Rabbit, however, said that she had the single-mindedness of a hedgehog. He thought that made her really, really boring. But she did outlive him. She was deeply private. She confided many strange and funny stories to me. My hair started turning gray after she died. Seriously, you could count 4 strands. I find myself struggling to describe her now, as I did this summer. Steve can attest to the numerous emails I sent, fresh in my grief, trying to describe her, still failing. The grief still feels fresh. Without the denial, it's fuller now, in its own way. I've talked to people about her. My husband thought she was in her 90s. He was off by an entire generation. She barely made 60. I haven't talked to my grandmother about her. They had the same doctor. I still find it hard to talk about her because people keep wondering who she was and why I'm so bad at describing her. And the answer is, she's a very private person. She erased herself from the internet in a way that few people do, especially considering how much she had published and how public a life she led. I can't let go of that. In fact, I have screenshots of articles that used to be available on the internet. We used to be Facebook friends. I remember when she won a prize for teaching and she wore the necklace that I gave her from the shop I worked in, from the designer who lived on the sofa of one of my coworkers. Another coworker tried to set me up with her son, but that didn't end well. I still find myself unable to stop talking about her, to stop trying to talk about her, or to stop trying to paint a portrait of her, or to make a portrait of her that somebody can see her the way I did. I can't let go of that first flush of grief, that shock, that inability to put anything in perspective or to make any meaningful narrative. So I'm asking you all to help me with one small part of my grief. And by that I mean to help me select among the many, many images, 798, of the ones that are most interesting. There's a clipboard next to the box of photos. Please place a check mark next to the photos you find most interesting. The photos are numbered on the back. I'm asking you to intervene in my artistic process as my grief has done, to create a counterbalance to my grief, to be something else. I'm asking you to help me get this project closer to finished, whatever finished might mean. Please help me. Please help. Please.